wasting hours just studying vocab lists. It gives them satisfaction, but it's just not practical. Oh, I love studying English watching Friends. If you want to use business English, Friends is not very useful because it's too casual. Everyone wants the shortcut. If you do this one thing, you're going to get fluent. It doesn't really work like that. Je parle français aussi, couramment, espagnol también. สวัสดีครับพูดภาษาไทยได้นิดหน่อยนะครับ저는 하킴입니다. 용관입니다. 하지메마시테 홀ton 하킴と申します. Que se crée le réunionnais un petit peu mauricien.
What's happening, people? Welcome back to GOLUREMI Languages, the greatest podcast on earth for language learning. Today, we have Mr. the Great, the Grand, HAKIM. How you doing, man?
Pleasure to be here, Will. It's nice to be on your podcast, as you've been on Evolve quite a few times now, so
it's true.
Very honored. How many languages do you actually speak?
Spanish, French, Italian, Danish, Swedish, Croatian, Russian, German, and English.
How did you actually become a polyglot?
10 hours a day doing Duolingo, then talk to your AI friend. Never listen to the language. Guys, don't do that.
That's true. In talking and getting to know you for some time, we have been able to talk about language learning, and I think we've never put any of that stuff, just off-the-cuff conversations online. So what we're going to do today, my friends, we are going to get into a little bit of your story, and then we're going to get straight to the point on what do I need to do. I think you're a perfect person because you've had a necessity to learn languages, so you have a good understanding of, like, I got to get this done. I have a reason to do it. And here's what's going to happen. And plus, you've talked to, I don't know, at this point, at least 100 or more top language learners in the world. So start us off with who you are and where language learning plays a role in your life. Mm-hmm. All right?
Yeah, first, huge thanks to be here. Happy to get straight into this. So, yeah, my name's HAKIM. I am a mix of British and Pakistani, but I grew up with a Ghanaian grandfather. So from a young age, I'm in white England, grew up in Kent, but I had West African and South Asian influences around me. And I think the desire to learn languages actually came from the fact that I couldn't always understand the languages around me at home because I'm not fully fluent in Punjabi or Urdu still, something I'm working on. And then I would hear my granddad speaking a variety of different West African languages, whether his first language was Ewe, mm-hmm. and which is also spoken in Togo, but he would be like seamlessly switching to like Tree and Ga and all these other languages. So at home, I was frustrated because I was never fully taught those languages. But then as soon as it came to school, French and Spanish, something in my mind is just like, for some reason, I just thrived in those classes. And that, I guess, was the spark for the rest of my life to spend time appreciating language and culture in general. I worked for the UN for about 4 years based in Bangkok. And after 4 years of working in that environment, again, super international, loved it. Something in me is like, I need to build something of my own. And that's where the podcast came. And since then, we got to meet you. We've interviewed a bunch of different people as well. So, that's a short intro for me.
Okay, so kick us off with the languages that, you feel you have a proficiency in. What do you feel you speak well, as well as even the ones that you've dabbled in? Just give us an idea of your language arsenal.
For sure. So obviously English is my mother tongue, even though it's not my mother's mother tongue. So then I would hear Punjabi and Urdu at home. I'm not fluent, but I can understand a lot. And I've been watching a lot of TV dramas and trying to expose myself to that. So the vocab is there. Can't speak it as much yet, but I'm definitely working on that. Je parle français aussi, couramment. Maintenant, de nos jours, je ne le parle pas trop souvent, mais je comprends bien la langue. Español también. Pasé mucho tiempo en el colegio en Inglaterra estudiando español. So I can really feel the most comfortable in English, French and Spanish. Then, of course, italiano è molto similare. No sé si es similar, pero entiendo la mayoría.
Sí.
When an Italian or Portuguese person speaks to me slowly, a lot of crossover, so I feel comfortable with that. สวัสดีครับพูดภาษาไทยได้นิดหน่อยนะครับ which is Thai. อยู่4 ปีที่กรุงเทพ which means I lived 4 years in Bangkok. Well, it's now 5 years almost. So 5 ปีที่แล้ว so I expose myself a lot in Thailand. I'm not fluent by any means, but I really put myself out there to try and immerse myself in the culture and the language. 한국어 조금 할 수 있어요. 저는 하킴입니다. 용관입니다. Korean, I spent a lot of time during my year abroad in Reunion Island studying French. I became very close with a Korean guy. 한국 형 있어요, which means I got a Korean brother in Reunion Island. I went out to Korea for the first time in 2015 and worked a lot with Korean since then. So a lot of Korean vocab, culture has influenced my life. What other ones? Yeah, Japanese. I spent some time in Japan as well. I can do the formalities, you know. はじめまして、ホルトン、HAKIMと申します。I would say those are the strongest ones. There's probably others. Creole. Comment il est, les gars? Dallon. Because créole réunionnais, un petit peu mauricien. So I've got that influence from doing my year abroad for 1 year in Reunion Island. I went there to learn French, but the brothers out there and the sisters out there, they got their Creole, which shake things up, let's say, in a beautiful way. Probably a couple others in there, but those are the main ones I'd say.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, then let me get straight to it, because for someone who, okay, at home you were hearing at least, you know, more than one language from time to time, but still you more or less grew up using and utilizing English. How do we get from here to this point where you're rattling off phrases and things and, you know, tremendous pronunciation and ability to have fluency in several languages? Walk me through just the simple steps. Everybody's got apps. Everybody's got this stuff. We're going to start with first, what do you need to avoid? All right? Because one of the things that we've been doing on the channel is I've been inverting thinking, because I think that it's a really powerful exercise to make sure everybody's trying to, what is the method? What is it? No. What do I need to avoid so that I can make sure I'm hitting fluency? Right? So start there. What would you avoid in today's modern world in order to make sure you're on the right path?
That's an excellent question. You're really making me think. I would say the first thing that instantly comes to my mind is wasting hours just studying vocab lists. And I know my Korean friends, that's going to hit them hard because they really study for their like SATs is called the sunung, which is their make or break, which uni you get into in Korea that dictates the rest of your life. They love spending so much time reading and learning vocab. It gives them satisfaction, but it's just not practical. I'm fully of the opinion that it's much better to speak a language, and if you don't know vocab, just describe something. Like, ah non, je sais pas comment dire ça. C'est le truc qui tu utilises quand tu écris.
Exactly.
And then, yeah, pen, stylo, you know, and then that's more practical than stylo. I don't know anything else I can say, you know, so I would say wasting time. And this is something that you actually really made me think about when we spoke, was that you said if you've got a finite amount of time, let's say you're only studying for 1 hour a day, that's not that much time. Really hone in on what's going to be useful for your goal. And when you said that, that made me really be self-critical, that like you may enjoy I don't know, let's say, for example, TV drama. The one that everyone talks about, the buzzword, everyone, oh, I love studying English watching Friends. Friends can be excellent if your goal is to communicate like those types of people in America, casual conversation. If you want to use business English, Friends is not very useful because it's too casual. So hone in on your goal. What do you want to do? And make sure that the time you use matches your goal. And when you do that, you'll be a lot more motivated and you'll feel the satisfaction of, I want to speak business English for business, for my work. Suddenly, I'm learning these phrases. Could you please send this back to me by this deadline? Oh, deadline, that's a great word. Deadline's not a good word if you're in the pub with a couple of friends or whatever. So it's really pinpointing and identifying your goal and the target style of language. That could be no matter what language that's in. Those, I think, were the two main things.
So you started us off by making sure that we avoid the study of vocabulary lists, stuff that is just going to be isolated terms, which 100% can't agree more. And then you've linked that from saying, I don't want to do that, but I want to do this, which is honing on our stuff. So I'm going to keep us still with inverted thinking just for a little bit and what we want to avoid. Where do we find you? What do you avoid in the modern world with, let's say, Duolingo apps? I mean, you're very well aware of what I, do, and I know other polyglots and people in language learning have different view, but clearly not all apps are made the same. Clearly not all digital learning stuff is truly beneficial. What do you avoid in that realm? And you can include AI in this if you want to touch on your thoughts on that. What do you avoid?
See, I think there's a misconception here that like any like TikTok reels or shorts are bad and that any AI is bad. But for me, I always see those as like the cherry on the cake, which can be good. If you're studying and making gains, and then at the end of the day, you've got 30 minutes where you scroll. If you're watching 30 minutes of a monkey dancing, compared to 30 minutes of like, oh, interesting phrases in Japanese, and you learn this nuance that at the dinner table they say "Gochusou deshita" at the end of the meal, that on its own is like pen. It's not going to help you learn the whole language, but it's still better than 30 minutes of monkey dancing.
Yeah,
and you can understand those cultural nuances through shorts. And through AI, a bit of chatting. Sometimes I'm bored, I just open up GPT and then say like, ça va? Oui, je vais bien. Comment allez-vous? Have those little chats. It's fun.
Yeah.
But that on its own is not going to be the thing. So avoid relying on them solely. Is what I would say. Incorporate them, but you can't rely only on that. In the same way you can't, I think this is the hard pill for a lot of people to swallow, is that it's the same with the gym. I've seen that everyone wants the shortcut. If you do this one thing, you're going to get fluent. It doesn't really work like that. If you only speak and you never study grammar, or vice versa, like you have to basically, the thing that no one ever wants to hear is that it's difficult and you've got to put in place a bunch of different things at the same time and build them up over time rather than quick gains. Like maybe some people can do that, like military people. We've had a few people on the channel before who were in the military and they had to quickly condense a lot of language in 6 months, get fluent in Arabic before they
deploy.
Yeah, but then overall, unless you can really dedicate your whole life for 6 months, I would say focus on the marathon rather than the sprint.
And that's the thing that people don't quite understand. I did a video on CIA attack, as I've had several CIA and intelligence officers on some of our other podcasts, The Way of Will John, and even on the language channel. And what people don't quite understand is when those people, like you're talking about 6 months before I got to go to, they spend, and many diplomats do this as well. Like when they go to the language school, it's all day. They're being paid to do this. That's their job for 3 months, 2.5 months, whatever. Now, when we're talking about people who learn really quickly over 6 months, that's kind of how they're doing it. If you're like, oh, how did he do it in 6 months? Well, what you call 6 months is you call an hour of a day. What they call over 6 months
8 hours.
is like 8 to 10 hours of
intense.
6 days most of the time. Sometimes, it's 7. Sometimes it's 5. It's very intense. All right. So, but with that in mind, knowing that not everybody's going to have 8, 10 hours, I'm going to put that question back to you that you kind of talked about. I have an hour of my day. I'm a busy person. I work a 9 to 5. I've got an hour at least that I can commit 5 to 6 days a week. Maybe on the weekends I can commit a little more. What do I do in that hour to learn a language best?
I'm going to answer that question by going diverting a little bit by saying how I got to a fluency in French and Spanish, which nowadays that I don't even use. There's so many holes in my grammar now because I don't use them all the time. I studied French and Spanish from the age of about 11. If you know the British education system, I did GCSE and A-level in French and Spanish. And then at university, my first degree was politics and French, double major. We say double joint honors in the UK. And I did classes in degree level Spanish while I was studying French as well. So in total, that's around 10 years of my life where I would sometimes have days, 2 hours French, 2 hours Spanish. And still at this day now, because I don't use the languages all the time, I forget what le or la is. I can't remember this word or that word because I'm not really using these languages anymore. That's frustrating. So because I did it for 10 years, often multiple hours per day during the week, to then try and condense all of that into an hour is really difficult. But you can, I think, make a lot of progress by, again, first, it depends on the goal. Let's establish a goal of 1 hour. What's the goal of that person?
That person is trying to get to a point, which I think I'm going to go with the majority of people that I think are watching this. They have never been able to fully feel like they speak the language. They've done Duolingo, they've done this, they've done that, they've failed. Because when they finally go to France, to Spain, they realize, I don't actually speak. I understand a little bit, but I don't actually speak. I just want them to get to this level where you can communicate. You may be a little rusty here and there, but that comes back incredibly fast.
True.
Right? So can you get us to that point?
Yep. So what I would say then is, for me, French is my best language. And if I wanted to get there as quick as possible from ground zero, I would suggest you have to be with a native speaker if you want to do it as quick as possible. Like if you can identify someone in your area, online can be incredibly useful, but if we're speaking in an ideal world, I can be physically with someone who speaks that language, and we can dedicate some time, maybe 10 or 15 minutes, to going over some grammar and the boring, less fun part, the chemical, like the logical, mathematical side of the language, understanding tenses, understanding verbs and conjugations. That was the first thing I learned actually in French and Spanish. I found it very useful. So having some time every day where you are refining your understanding of that grammatical side of the language, but then also having at least 30 minutes of very, very natural conversation where you're pushing yourself to every time, like the conversation should feel like at least half of that conversation time should feel quite challenging and difficult. You should intentionally try and have conversations that feel more difficult each time. And if you can get live feedback where they note down the mistakes you're making and you're constantly learning from those mistakes, you're going to progress quickly. I mean, something I didn't mention is I've tutored English online now for about 7 years, over 5,000 classes. And these are the things I've noticed from the people who improve is they really don't only identify their mistakes, they force themselves to learn from them and practice the revised version. If I correct you every time, no, it's not le, it's la. But then you keep doing it, like you need strict guidance, like you have to use this verb next class. You really got to be strict with forcing yourself to go out of your comfort zone and level up in those conversations. So you could do 15 minutes grammar, 30 minutes of speaking, and then 15 minutes or going over the mistakes you made in those and like really going, like making sure that your next hour, you're going to practice. Like, let's say you want to learn business English. He said this. Oh, he stated. It's a very simple change from say to stated, right? You're learning English. And the next class, you say said again. Your tutor should say to you, no, we're practicing business English. He stated. Can you send that back? No. Could you please? Would it be possible for you to? If you then make those mistakes, this is where I guess the Asian and African side of me are being very strict. Having someone who can say, no, like you've said you're going to practice using this verb now, like stop. And then one more thing I'd like to mention as well for grammar that really worked for me is instantaneous correction. And I had this with very close friends of mine who I studied French with in reunion. Whenever I made a grammatical error in French, they would interrupt me, which is very frustrating. But it's, in my opinion, the most effective way to train your muscle memory. If I said, oh, je mangeais hier. No, j'ai mangé. Hier, je mangeais. No, Hakim, c'est j'ai mangé. And eventually you just get it. And if you don't get it, they won't let you finish until you get it. I find that incredibly useful for grammar. Most people don't like it because you feel like someone's telling you you're wrong, but no pain, no gain.
Right.
This, in my opinion.
That's fascinating, especially because there is this set, and what I found, it's tough for people to, it's very tough what you're saying right now for many people to get, because they want to feel that they have the ability to be fluent, an ability to speak, and when they're being interrupted or stopped in order to correct something, they think that they're not actually going to be able to speak. However, what it does is train to give some people who have anxiety confidence, right? Because you know you're right? You keep saying, I love using this one, and people are probably annoyed at me, at least on the other channel. If you keep saying apple, they go, no, it's un-apple. It's un-apple, right? Eventually, like you said, it works, and it sticks, and it fits, and you know with 100% certainty, which is a lot of the problem with people that have anxiety when they're trying to speak. And so I want to touch on one part there, because grammar is a huge thing for people to get into. You mentioned verb conjugations, because I'm a big proponent of telling people to be wary of going too deep into grammar at the beginning, because no input, no this, etc. But verb conjugations, and especially present tense, I want, I need, allows you generally to get a big push on your talking. So what are the grammar points specifically? You mentioned verb conjugations. I mean, we're talking about French when you may have a feminine and masculine, right? There's no neuter, but what are the grammar points that you would look at the beginning of learning a language in that time period? If you could give anybody, we're speaking about French and Spanish, you can use those as an example. where would you focus on?
Yeah. I still remember when I was in year 7, the first lessons of French that we had, it was être and avoir, so the verb to be, the verb to have, and it was so, like, at that time it wasn't necessarily fun, but we had to do it. In Spanish, ser, estar, tener. These like basic verbs of to have, to be, avoir, these things and the irregularities in the language. Without those in French or Spanish, you can't really function because they use so much. So that part is not as like rewarding as un pain au chocolat, s'il vous plaît, monsieur. Like you can't just use je suis or j'ai. You don't get that like rewarding feeling, but that is the necessary building blocks. Like you need those. So once you've got the main verbs down in terms of conjugations, and this is of course, it depends on the language, but once you've got those down and then you've got the basic tenses, you can start to have conversations. Like vocab, I still think will come in later and is the brain, when you need vocab, it will retain it. Learning unnecessary things that your brain doesn't need. Like, for example, to say like table, if you're never interacting in an environment with tables and you never have to use that, your brain's like, you're forcing your brain to make this real estate in your brain for this word that it just doesn't think like useful, so it just keeps forgetting it.
For sure.
It's there somewhere, but then if you're a writer or like every time you go into the class, you need un stylo, you will never forget that word because you have to use it. So the vocab that you need, the brain's awesome for this. It will just like hold on to it dearly. I think your example about like when you're getting beaten up and you're saying stop, yeah. You're gonna know the word for stop, but like there are some words that even if someone paid you couldn't forget. So if your brain thinks it's important, it will learn it. However, though, this is where it gets interesting depending on which language you're speaking. In a lot of Asian languages, there's no conjugations. You can just, like in Thai, gin, you gin, I gin means to eat or to drink. It doesn't matter. And there's no tenses. Like, วันนี้ กินข้าว today I eat. เมื่อวาน กินข้าว yesterday I eat. But they know with the context of yesterday, it's I ate. So same in Korean as well. Like you don't need to 할 수 있어? 할 수 있어. 나 한국어 할 수 있어요. I speak Korean. 한국어 할 수 있어요? Do you speak Korean? Exactly the same, just the tone change there. So in languages where you don't need, there's no verbs or tenses, other things are going to be important. But for French and Spanish and these ones where they're very conjugation focused, I've heard English is a lot easier in that regard because you don't have as much. But French and Spanish, if you don't know those, you're kind of proverbially, you're in a you're stuck.
There's another aspect of this that I think has to be touched on, which is now that we've got our hour, now that we've gotten told them, which I'm a huge proponent of as well, is having a goal and knowing where we're going and why. Because like you said, if I don't care, I'm not going to, it doesn't just work for language learning. That's for everything. We let information, we have too much information. If I don't care, I'm not remembering. But what about, we all know the New Year's resolution language learner or the summer vacation language learner. I'm going to France for the summer. I'm going to learn. All right, you get the next time, right? How did you stay motivated / disciplined? I mean, there's a big difference between motivated and disciplined. And a lot of people here who have done this, they've started, they've stopped, or they've started for a long time. It didn't work. They give up. How did you stick it through? How's that work? Is there a hack? Do you have a system? How'd you do that?
I think this is where the enjoyment factor comes in, and the person who enjoys walking will always go further than the person who enjoys just the destination on its own. What motivated me a lot from growing up in a very like monocultural area in England was the feeling, the sensation of wow, connecting with other people, especially once I moved to London for university, that all this stuff I studied in class I could actually use. Like I remember studying chemistry for A-level. I'm not really using those. Whereas the Spanish A-level that I studied, still to this day, eres mexicano. Wow, hablo un poco de español. ¿De dónde eres? You know, like, straight away I can get into that conversation. That can motivate you. So then when I'm outside of the classroom, because I enjoy that feeling so much of connecting with people, it didn't really feel like a chore. And this is where the answer really, it's a bit misleading for me to say, yeah, you can really do it in an hour, because I would immerse, you use the term artificial immersion in your work. I think that's excellent, because I would wake up listening to some French hip hop. And at the time, I don't know so much about the music nowadays in France, but when I was studying my GCSEs and A-levels, French hip hop was incredibly conscious. Like some of the English music at the time was like about dancing in the rave or whatever. And then I'd listen to these French rappers speaking about marginalisation, you know, like the really deep social conscious rap, which was actually excellent for my GCSEs and A-levels. Because I would use all these terminology, like sociological, whatever, sociopolitical, socioeconomic terms that they were using in their raps. I would listen to it, think, wow, this sounds deep. Go through the paroles, the lyrics, and just identify all these words. And they would be in my bank because I enjoyed listening to the music. I wanted to know what Youssoupha, who was a very socially conscious French rapper, is genius. I wanted to know what he was saying, because like he had a song called Macadam, you know, Grande sur la Macadam, dam, like growing up in the kind of banlieue. And I would see the video and I would see these guys and I was thinking, like, okay, like, what is he saying? That drove me to, in my own time, nothing to do with, like, I didn't feel like it was studying. I was just interested. But to understand him, I was studying in that process. Same for Spanish as well. I've got family in the States, and I would mainly go to LA and Florida. So many Latinos. Oh, yeah. And then I was like, wow, these guys, these sound pretty good. These don't sound like my Spanish teacher in England. Well, you know, my English teacher who was teaching Spanish. So he's an English guy teaching Spanish. Hablamos, hablan. Hoy vamos a estudiar. You know, when these guys, ¿qué pasa, güey? Vato, ¿dónde estás? Whoa. Like, this was cool. I started listening to Don Omar and these guys, and what does this slang word mean? What does that mean? Listening to reggaeton. Whoa, this is different. You're picking up vocab. Maybe this is where the code switching comes in. I realize not all of these words are going to be good in the exam, but a lot of it actually is. Yeah. And you pick up, like, what was it? Like, lo que pasó, entre tú y yo. Pasó. Oh, that's the past tense. Oh, what happened? Pásame la botella. Pásame. Oh, okay, pass me. You pick up the words and you recognize that through music. Helped me a lot as well. That's a lot to do in just an hour. It was, you know, plus grammar, plus those things. So this was something that came part of my whole life. There's so many examples of things I used to do. I used to play Pokemon in French and Spanish because I was a big nerd back in the day. I still am, you know. But I thought, okay, I'll download these games in French or Spanish. If I was like just playing the game in English at this age, the time and the value probably, you know, I couldn't say that it's that productive. But when I was doing it in French, I would learn all these like amazing words that the attacks of the Pokemon would use. And I'd pick up like fatal foudre, you know, like thunder and these words. And I'd see them, like, there's no way I would have learned these words otherwise, you know. So I think that it's the stuff outside of the classroom, socializing, big extrovert. I wanted to be around all different types of people. Language helped me so much in that, and it forced me to go out of my comfort zone, kept making mistakes. But I think if you care, I know you're a bit similar in this, if you care a lot about making mistakes, it's going to push you back a lot. The mistakes are actually what help you learn, especially when someone identifies them for you. So.
Yeah, that feedback loop is something that we as a culture are afraid of and avoid, especially online, right? There are videos of me online making all sorts of mistakes and they just crush me, right? And people, they crush you. Oh, you speak 9 languages, but you missed this. I think I don't know. I was in Italy doing an interview and I think I don't know if I said cinquantesimo. I said something wrong. Obviously, comment section, just crush you, right? Well, that I don't care. It doesn't, for me, it's nothing, you know? And I think you've identified something that is a huge factor for everyone. You created a feedback loop. You didn't mind it in grammar, and you were constantly, that's something I think is very unique. You created a feedback loop for yourself, and you're constantly looking to improve. The use of music also is brilliant. And I think what you're touching on, and for people who are probably listening or watching this, is that if you avoid the feedback loop, you're never really going to get there, you know? And so one of the things that I want to touch on here, just you've been able to thrive, you know, by loving your mistakes. Mm-hmm. In a modern world, in a modern society where they seek, and I really want to get your thoughts on apps, mm-hmm. because I don't think you've touched specifically mm-hmm. on, oh, did I use this app, this app? You talked about music, you talked about this stuff. So there's two things I want to ask you. One, apps. What would you use? Do you use? Is there anything that you might recommend that you still feel is useful? And then you've continually now hinted at the fact that you're probably going to say that 1 hour is not enough time. How much would you say then, this person who's saying, all right, I hear what you're saying, the 1 hour is not enough. How much do I need to? All right, so apps, and how much time do I actually need to spend in learning a language? Okay, so in terms of apps, this is where, like, I'm 31 years old now, so when I was studying, I dabbled in Rosetta Stone, and that was useful to a certain extent. I remember some of the verbs I picked up in Korean at the time. But again, if you're not really speaking with someone or you don't have a native with you, it is just it's hard to really get breakthroughs. So I would say with apps, still to this day, they can be the cherry on the cake. There's massive value in apps. I think tutoring apps, right? Rather than sitting down and like flicking through like, okay, this is the word for pen, this is the word for table. If you can actually speak through an app with a native speaker and get that live correction, or a human, you're asking. Sorry, yeah, exactly. Okay. Something like, you know, I don't want to name names. This is so far, I don't know if this is sponsored or not, but there are apps where you can speak to a native speaker and they can have incredible value, especially on the go. I mean, this is what I've done for years. I've helped people with their English, and they've been on the subway, they've been in their cars parked, they've been in the back of a car while someone else is driving. You know, how you like practical that is amazing. Still not 100% substitute for face-to-face, but if you can have an app where literally you've got someone you can speak to and they can really get you like native like expressions, that would be my recommendation for apps themselves if you're going to spend half an hour on an app. And then the second part of the question was about how much time. It's hard to quantify it because, for example, let's say your habits, anything that you do normally in your day now. Do you listen to a podcast? Try listening to a podcast in like French. You try and learn French, okay. But your level is not high enough yet to fully understand it. Okay, watch it with the subtitles. Active learning, passive learning, we've spoken about before, right? You can still, your habit of listening to a podcast, now that's 1 hour of a French podcast. You like video games? Your video game, I remember I used to play FIFA in French and Spanish. Goal, 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 goal. Saca la banda. I know what that means because I was sweating FIFA in Spanish. And, you know, you know, I know all this because I sweat FIFA, but I knew that I had to, I was studying French and Spanish. So that half an hour of FIFA, which someone could look at and say, oh, video games, waste of time. At least I was practicing my listening, you know, in French and Spanish at the time for that. So then video games time. That's now in your language. You might like, I don't know, anime. I recently, and I'm not ashamed to admit this, last week I was scrolling through Netflix. Sure. And I saw there was a new Pokemon movie, Pokemon something something Jungle. Okay. I just watched it in French with French subtitles because why not? It kind of was like nostalgic to watch Pokemon after all this time. At least while watching it in French, my brain is doing something. So then you watch an hour of Netflix, you watch an hour podcast, that's 2 hours. FIFA, 3 hours. This might not seem so valuable, but the compound effect of a year of all of those, as long as those are like supplementary, if you're then studying that with all that immersion, half an hour speaking to a tutor, the gains are going to be tremendous. But like I think you mentioned in another conversation, it's like brushing your teeth, it's like planting a tree. You don't see the gains overnight. The people who are addicted to the short-term gains, unfortunately, you're not really going to, apart from the dopamine rushes of, 안녕하세요, Whoaaa, this foreigner said hello in my language. That's fun. Pakistani guy, black guy, you know, you can surprise people. That's very fun, but you can't get deeper. You know, that's very surface level. Like, unless you go and properly study, like we mentioned, it's hard. I mean, hours and hours every day, but the hours don't feel like hours when it's, you know, when you're watching a YouTube video, I don't feel like, I'm studying so much now. I like food reviewers. Mm-hmm. I would watch some French food reviewers.
I learned these words. Then I'm still enjoying my like chill time, but just put it in the language, especially once you can understand. Even if you don't understand, put your subtitles on in English or whatever language you speak. You will build up and grow over time with that, but habits and routine have to stick. It's like, I'm still working on my fitness. It doesn't matter if you train super hard for a month, I'm going to be a professional footballer. For 1 month, I train like a pro. Then after that, you just stop. Yeah, it's better to, getting that consistency, I think, is really, really important.
See, now you've essentially confirmed, and we didn't plan this just so everyone is clear, but you've essentially confirmed something that I've been saying and stating is one of the biggest drivers for our method in artificial immersion, which is you need to transform. You need to change your life. And what you're telling me when you're deciding to watch Pokemon in French, listen to a podcast in French, play video games in French, talk in French, is that you've decided to opt out of the English part of your life. You've decided to transform. And I think that it's really important for people to hear that someone that's successful in doing that it's not just me saying, oh, this is how you got to do it. Like, you came upon that yourself, and that's what I needed to do. All that time you just talked about, those 4 hours essentially, you could have done in English. And you didn't because you wanted to change, right? And so transformation, I find, is a huge aspect. But I want to go back now to the vocab list we started off on. Not only is it important, obviously, to learn words, a lot of people can get really obsessed, like you said, and in Korean culture, maybe it's high up there. But can you touch on reading at all and how important? I know the research behind this, but in a more practical sense, how did that work for you? Graded readers? How did you find what to read? And when it's too high for your level, how did reading play a role?
I'll admit that reading in general was something that I could process information very fast, but sitting down and reading a book, the attention, I would get like distracted. So even in English, audiobooks transformed I can say when I tell people now, oh, I've read that book. You recommended Deep Work, right? I read that after you recommended it.
Sure.
I didn't really read it, I listened to it.
Sure.
But I still absorb the information. Arguably, I just know that I retain information a lot through my ears.
Okay.
So in general, when it comes to French, Spanish, other languages, I rarely actually write things down. But I obsess over the audio in my brain. I repeat things obsessively that people say. We can probably speak about that a bit more later. But then when it comes to reading, I haven't actually read that many books in other languages, but my reading comes from subtitles. For example, if I'm watching a documentary, I will put let's say French documentary, French subtitles. I am reading obsessively those words. I'm the type of person that even in English, I like having the subtitles on things because I want to scrutinize the language. I want to see why did they use that word. And in French, I'll do the same. Why did they use that word? I don't know that word that they used. So I am actively watching this documentary in French and I'm going through, I don't know what that word is. Then I'll look it up. So it might not be like literature in that sense, and maybe that's a challenge I need to set to myself because so many people I've interviewed have said the importance of that, and I really, I take that criticism, seriously. That I'm sure there are a lot of benefits of it. These days, I haven't read in other languages as much. I think that needs to be my new challenge. But even though I haven't read books, if you've ever played a Pokemon game, you're just reading the whole time. If you watch something with the subtitles, especially, again, it depends on what your goal is. I remember watching Pokemon in French when I was studying it at uni, and I would pick up a lot of words. And I can still remember clearly there was someone in the French saying, approchez, approchez. And I just didn't know what it meant. And I asked my Mauritian friend, what is he saying? Approchez, approach, come here. I learned that, and I still remember vividly from a Pokemon episode. So having the subtitles and reading it on the screen can really reinforce I think it's so valuable, one of the best things out there, but I don't actually read that much of this.
Since we're talking about subtitles, there's a debate online all over the place. For some people with language learning, like subtitles or no subtitles. My question isn't subtitles or no subtitles, because I think I agree, especially at the beginning, very important. Very important for you to see the word. It helps, especially if you can read the script. My question for you is, when do you know to start taking them away so that you're not reading, but you're training your ear? Because some people have an issue where they get into a situation, especially a language like French, the pronunciation's a little different, the grammar, etc. How would you know when you need more oral practice instead of this subtitle based and there when you get kind of taken off the training wheels. How do you know when to do that? Why should you do that, etc.?
I think you just got to test yourself, because we actually had a class at uni called Advanced Oral Competency, and this is where they pushed us to our limits, where we would have to listen to like French news for like a minute and a half, and then we had to like give a summary straight away, and all we could do is listen. That was really difficult, and I remember at the start thinking like, oh, this is tough. So what I did to prepare for that class was force myself every day to watch French news, or listen especially to French news. And I remember the first time, this was in my final year of French, I remember, so I'd been studying it for years. I remember watching the news and thinking, wow, this is tough. After a year of every day, just at the end of the day, and this was kind of passive watching as well. I would just have it on in the background. After like 9 months, I could understand the majority of it, because I guess my brain was training itself to do that. But I do think, ironically though, the more you do spend reading, the better your ears are getting, because you're identifying that sound, that approcher that I didn't know. If I can read that approcher, okay, the next time I hear it, I won't need the subtitles,
right,
because I've learned by reading it. So the more you do it, that is your training for battle. But you only know, like you said, once you've tested yourself. So yeah, you could, an active way of doing that is play it without the subs. Identify what you didn't understand, go back, read it with the subs. And then you force yourself to like note that down and listen out for it. I think this is it. You don't need to say, oh, I'm going to listen out for that word. Your brain will identify that word. Once you've learned it through that, you will probably recognize it straight away. Like I now know from a Pokemon episode, approcher, that I can't forget that word, because I didn't know what it meant when I heard it. And I had to ask my Mauritian friend at the time, because I didn't have subtitles at that time. So it's super valuable to do both. I would say majority of time at the start with subs, and eventually you might get comfortable. But if you don't worry, go back, put them on, learn the word. It's all winning. As long as you're doing it consistently, you're going to take gains for sure.
There's been some, Alexander Arguelles, who I mentioned kind of off screen, kind of correlated learning a language to watering a plant, and this is completely contrary to all the ways that we have to name our titles for our videos and stuff like this. Just to be honest, you guys, we all don't want to name our titles, learn a language fast and all this stuff. We just have to get forced into this world, and if you want to do it, we have to do this. But can you talk a little bit about that journey? Because I don't think people truly understand what that feels like, because you can't see, when you plant a seed for a plant, you don't get to watch it grow every day. It just happens. It's the same as a kid or something. They're bigger. You go away, you come back, it's bigger. Watering this plant every day is the same as understanding compound interest, compound gains, all this stuff. And would you, for yourself, rank higher consistency or intensity? Or would you rather have go to a large language camp where I spend 6 weeks, and then I just do a little bit every other day? What method for you seems, if you had a year, better to do? A little bit every day or a big sprint? How would you chunk that down?
I mean, in an ideal world, I think consistency overall wins. However, like, if you try and sprint all the time, as a footballer, right, you're going to gas out.
It's over.
However, you can sprint at certain times, and sprinting can be extremely effective and necessary. So for me, going to Reunion Island for a year was incredible. That was the sprint. I was surrounded by French and Creole. I had no choice, sink or swim. People were speaking to me in French. I couldn't understand. People speaking to me in Creole. I couldn't understand. I deliberately tried to stay away as much as I could from the English speakers. And even like I would force myself to use French. Like I sprinted for a year. That basically has helped me for life. But based on my life and everything, I wasn't going to live in French speaking countries for my whole life. So I couldn't always do that. I couldn't say, okay, I'm never going to go back to England again. I'm never going to go to Thailand again because they don't speak French. But the sprint was super useful. But then what helps is afterwards, when I'm in Thailand, when I'm in England, try and keep in contact with my French friends. Have a group around you. Like when you have friends, this is the advantage of if you're in a diverse place, London, you've got your diverse cities in America. It's way easier to do that. but consistency wins overall always, because you try, if you only go to a language school for 6 months and then after that you never do it again, what's the point really? Like, ça sert à rien. It's completely useless in my opinion if you're not using it. That's not to say that you can't go and recover those things. You know, you do, like you said, it comes back quickly, but I think it's the same with training. Like, okay, I'm gonna go to the gym for 1 month and train super hard, and then after that I'm not gonna ever train again. You're just taking 2 steps forward, like 1 step forward, 2 steps back. The routine, the artificial immersion, I really like that way of terminology, how you coined it, because it's, you don't, like, when your phone is in the language that you're learning, right? You're all these things are just so, like, you're making it easy for yourself. You're not thinking, oh, I'm studying now because I'm looking at my phone. It's just in French. You know, unlock is there in French. You know, photos is there in French. And then you're talking to your friend who, you know, your social network is in that language. So you're not thinking, oh, like, for example, the co-founder of Evolve, Clemente, he's half French, half Spanish. When I'm around him and his family, it's not, oh, yes, I'm studying now. I'm speaking to your parents. You know, like, when your network is around people using other languages as well, it just becomes part of your routine. That will always beat intensity in the long term. In the short term, of course, you can get those gains, but consistency over everything, in my opinion.
I think you touched on something that I've also kind of mentioned, but you basically stated it really well. If you make the tough things easy, you end up doing them, right? Which is why there's the whole trope about, you know, if you're trying to go to the gym, if you set everything up, right? If you get your gym clothes out, if you do that, if you walk out the door, well, you're probably going to go to the gym. If we can just get you to the gym, you'll work out, right? The tough part is getting there, right? The tough part is doing the French. And the tough part is doing that. And so I think aligning your life up, which is what you've done, which is a tremendous amount of thing. And I know it's easier said than done, right? Because you still have to have the will to do it. It's easy. You could just turn it to English and watch Pokemon in English. You could just do this. It's tempting. But if you can make it like that, then I think you do yourself a big service. So I want to ask, culturally, you've been a lot of places, and a lot of these languages, some of them not related whatsoever. What's been the toughest thing for you? I'm going to ask you next about your future and where you're headed and what's going on, what challenges you're going to take. But what was the toughest thing? And maybe if you could frame this in a way that you know so many of the speakers, you know, or sorry, some of the viewers, you know, they're looking at you right now and saying, I don't know if I have the same discipline as HAKIM. I don't know if I'm going to be doing all this. What was the toughest thing for you, and how'd you get over it? And maybe that'll help them.
So I think that one thing I do want to speak about as well is like accent pronunciation, if you've got time.
Yeah, please.
But in terms of, I'll break it down culturally and linguistically. Linguistically, Thai was the hardest because I was working for the UN there, and I was in an environment where everyone spoke English. Even my Thai friends, fully fluent in English. So even when I would try, they would always go back to English because these are guys who've studied abroad, you know, they're incredible linguists in their own right. But I'd never spoken like a properly like tonal language before, where ha and ha and ha all have different meanings. And I would try, it was so frustrating that for the first year, I'm the language guy. Everyone knows that HAKIM speaks a bit of Spanish, speaks a bit of Punjabi, do this. Like, I couldn't crack it. And it really did, like, it got to me. I was like, I'm just not that good. And then, you know, COVID happened, and I was suddenly in Thailand where 90% of my colleagues all went home. I stayed in Thailand. What can I do now? I'm only around Thai people. And the only thing that kind of grounded me in life at that time is, thank God, they opened the Muay Thai gym. So I had a very close friend who we've interviewed on the channel, Ben. She helped me to learn Thai with my Muay Thai trainer as well, who has like limited English. I was mainly with those two, and I had no choice. I was thrown in the deep end where like it was sink or swim. That forced me really to just like obsess over the tones, sit down with a Thai person, break those down, and eventually it just happened. And now, oi, gin khao le yang, oi, gin leo, gin alaya. Suddenly I got the tones. I'm not perfect by any means. I still make loads of mistakes, but the rewarding feeling of going through that, trying. Like when you're looking at someone, especially when you think you're decent at languages, and you try to say like, there's like, nice to meet you in Thai, I still struggle with. It's Yindi Tidai Rujak Krap. And I met my friend's mum, and I said, Yindi Tidai Rujak Krap, and she just couldn't understand me. I'm like, you know, I'm trying to be polite. And I'm just like, Yindi Tidai Rujak. And my friend was away for a bit. I think she went to the bathroom or something. And I was there with her mum like 3 or 4 times.
Oh, God.
And she couldn't understand me. And then I literally like, when she went, she was like, sorry, she couldn't understand. I'm like, I'm trying to say nice to meet you. So Thai people can correct me now. Yindi Tidai Rujak Krap. I've been working on to try and get that, but it was just a long process. It's difficult. Tones in a language, if you're not used to them, can be really difficult for some people. But that was probably the most challenging linguistically. Culturally, being in Reunion Island, Creole in Reunion, I love it. It's got so much energy, and it's very like, depending on who speaks it, but you might be walking and they'll say, Tega, like, which can be quite intimidating. That just be nice. Whoa, like this doesn't sound like French that I learned in class. These are like, they're so friendly, but it sounds intimidating when you don't know what they're saying. And that culturally was like, oh my God, I don't know what they're saying. They, you know, whatever. So that was scary at the start. But then by studying it, I felt it was just so fun. The music, the food, everything, the people, there's a vibe there. But languages can be intimidating. If you're not used to it, people speaking at you loud, like some cultures are very loud. They're not being rude at all. They're happy to see you, actually. They're expressing their excitement and joy to see you. But when you don't understand that, that's scary. And then the opposite of extreme of being in like Korea and Japan, where they're so like, as an American and as a quite extroverted Brit, we want to talk to everyone. In their cultures, there's so many little things. You're just offending people all the time. And you don't even realize it. And then like 2 years later, someone will explain, oh, by the way, did you know that's rude in Japan? And I'll have a flashback. Oh my God, I did that. And that's why my friend looked upset or whatever, or like eye contact. You know?
Okay.
This isn't even linguistic, but it's all linked, right? That when we're speaking, it's normal for us to make eye contact. After living in Asia, in a lot of cultures, that's rude. Wow. That's actually like a sign of aggression to a lot of people. You know, like, do you want to fight? You know, so it's like, I've been told my whole life, this is polite. And suddenly I'm in an environment where I'm speaking to someone and they're looking like this. I've been told that means they're disinterested, they don't like me, whatever. They're actually really showing respect to me in that moment. Those are, it's all about perspective. Do I see that as, oh my God, this is too hard, I don't like it? Or again, to bring up the video games, I loved Zelda as a kid.
Same.
Those games are difficult. You have to figure out something. And I see language as Zelda, where, oh my God, I'm insulting this person, I can't get this. And then suddenly, you cracked it.
Yeah.
I'm now not making eye contact. They're happy. Now we understand each other. It's all about perspective. Those things that were challenging are now like the things that I enjoy the most when it comes to this. So.
That subtext within language learning touches on so much. It's, you know, from our discussion about AI, that is so hard to explain, trying to get that across with AI. How are you going to explain what you just gave me? How does AI teach that? How does it teach that? I don't yet know the answer. I really don't. I'm at a loss unless it's going to show you a video and then get you. But really, like, you learn that through experience. The true depth of, you know, going to another culture gave you that, and that makes it wild. All right, so where are you going with your language learning? You're a young dude, got a lot of years ahead of you, hopefully. You know, a lot of things you can get into. Do you know the next languages you're going to learn? And if you do you know how you're going to approach them?
I think that this is I think in the polyglot community, there's always a debate of, is it better should I like get to semi-fluency in 10 languages or full fluency in 3 languages or whatever? I don't really know, but I do feel like doubling down on the foundations I've laid, because it is, going from ground zero is tough. Right? If you are super motivated for it, it can be done, and it definitely can be done. But because I've laid the groundwork in Thai and Korean now, and those are cultures that I interact with often in my professional and personal lives, like, it's a lot easier to say like, okay, those languages right now I can have basic conversation in. It would be awesome for me to get fluent because I'm spending a lot of time in Thailand and Korea, having that ability to really like, I find that there's the shock factor, you know, like we've said, your channel is amazing for this. Like you've got so much content of just fully taking people off guard. But then what a lot of people might not see is after you've done that, you're actually having conversations with them.
Right.
And that I think is like there's dopamine rush and then there's fulfillment. And you get the fulfillment by really learning the language well. And for me in my life, the real fulfillment of like, this is it, when you travel, let's say you spend a few days, you said you spent a few days in Uzbekistan recently, right? It's awesome. It's a new culture. It's a new language. But there's only a certain level of depth that you can get unless you really dive in. I've found with Thai and Korean, the more steps I take to understanding the history, the culture, the music, and all these, the deeper I go, the more like the rewarding it is for me. And even also Urdu as well, which is the official language of Pakistan. My mum originally is Pakistani, so Urdu and Punjabi, like those three, like Urdu, Punjabi are grouped together, they're pretty similar. Thai and Korean, those cultures have influenced me so much in my life over the last like 5-10 years, yet I'm not fluent in those languages. So that just shows like how much a culture can influence you even without the language. So imagine once I get to the point where I am fluent in those, that's what motivates me really. So I think that to do that though, why not use AI, but not rely on AI. I could probably ask AI, what is the difference between the nuance of this? It might know,
Sure.
It might not know, but the best lessons, I think, to go back, like I remember I was in Japan and like there's words that they have like in Japan, they're so like particular about the formality of a word. And I used a word that was not as polite, whatever. They said, no, don't say umai, say oishi for delicious. And I thought, look, I've learned this new word. And they're like, no, don't use that in that context. You have like, because of how like I felt in that moment when I was corrected, like I can never forget that. Like the lesson of life, university of life, teaching you those little things. Sometimes you will have to offend someone in order to never forget that. But as long, it's not that deep at the end of the day, right? And this is where the mistakes, like I've made so many mistakes that are impossible for me to forget now. So it's an essential part of the process. In French, I've like, there's the whole like using coup instead of que, like using like behind for the neck. And, merci beaucoup, and, like people will laugh about that. But then because of that, I can never forget it.
Yeah.
So I think that you could ask AI to teach me important lessons today. You're never going to remember it as much as when you make a mistake, you mess up.
Yep.
So actually messing up isn't messing up. Messing up is like the ultimate teacher for your brain.
Messing up is learning. That's it. And it can be messy and you can't avoid it. And I know we want to avoid it in today's society. And you're so right about AI. One of the biggest problems that I've had also with the AI revolution and the movement is we want all these, look at me, I'm shifting languages and stuff in my head. But we want summaries. My brain is saying resumen, or something like this, But we want summaries of, a summary of Shakespeare is not learning Shakespeare. A summary of a movie is not, 15 minutes, you didn't learn. I've just told you the superficial stuff, And so just to touch on all the points that you just said, you're so right on fulfillment. You get, the deeper you're learning, the deeper the relationships you have, the deeper the thing, the more enjoyment you have out of it. And so that's also the same for me, why I don't run around. And I'm sure I could by now have basic level proficiency in like 30 languages. I don't. Why? Because maintaining and this maintenance that you have to do to keep languages alive is so much, right? You've got to do a lot. And to your point, why I think that polyglots are so interested in reading is that I told you I was reading an Italian book. Well, if I'm not speaking Italian every day because I'm never in Italy, then that does it for me, right? And this reading the French or watching the French series, that allows me to do that. And so it becomes very important, And I think you're touching on something that I think will help a whole lot of people with fulfillment and with the maintaining of their languages is that you're doing this from your core. This is something that the thing that's driving you. It's why you're not going to go do the other ones. Okay, I got Thai, I got Urdu. These you have a connection to those things. That's going to push you. So I know we're getting in here close to the end. Maybe just throw us a few, your words, your best, like what have you learned over this course of everything? I know we're going to tell everybody, we already said this at the beginning, to check out the Evolve podcast. You have such a huge amount of information and things that are there. Not a whole lot. Is this the first time really
I've been on another podcast that hasn't been published yet, so this is probably, especially for languages, this is the first time.
Okay, yeah, because this will serve as a really good thing. I think a lot of the people that are watching the podcast and seeing you do this will really enjoy this because you have a ton of knowledge, and there's a ton of knowledge just over on the channel in general. So I recommend, obviously, everybody to go check it out. But what would you say, kind of as some final words for those people? I mainly always want to get after the people. So many people are out there trying to learn. By the way, just let me give you a stat. There's 500 million people that are using Duolingo. 500 million. There's
Whoa, I had 500,000,
500 million. All right. They have 500 million users, at least registered. They have 133 million monthly users. 133 million. Bigger than a whole host of different countries. All right. So many of these people are also struggling, giving up, doing that thing. And I like to speak to those people because, if we can convert even a percentage of those people into adopting your methods, I think we have a better society. We have more people winning, more people communicating. And so what would you say to those people that are in that bubble of struggling to try and figure out just, as a motivational factor and for what it's done for your life?
I would say, again, I don't want to bash anyone using any apps because they can have incredible value. Just, I keep saying, cherry on the cake.
Sure.
When you dedicate proper time to speaking with native speakers and studying the difficult parts of the grammar. I was lucky. I had that in school. I didn't want to always go to those grammar classes, but if I didn't do it, I failed. So I was kind of forced. There's always got to be some level of things that some people are going to enjoy reading more, some people are going to enjoy listening more, but you kind of force yourself to do those things. In the long term, you will definitely be more fulfilled, have more gains, basically. You'll get properly fluent and practical rather than just using an app, right? It's fun. It's, at the end of the day, you get a mini bit of satisfaction, but you have to be very self-critical and say, okay, I've been doing this for a year. Am I actually able to go out and interact with people? If not, I'm not saying delete the app. Go and do other things that are going to help you get there. Because once the feeling that most people will never get is they've studied properly and then they go out into the real world and they use it. It's like the most awesome ever. Firstly, it just shows you that you can do something. Some people get that in the gym, right? They get stronger. They go from 10 kg to 20 kg. That feels great. Having a conversation with someone in another language feels incredible. Getting better at that. Building up on that. Adding another language. Getting better at that. This is continual evolution. That's why we call the channel Evolve, because you're continuously progressing. You're continuously strengthening your brain. And most people probably won't get that from an app alone. And in terms of enriching your life, I'm an English boy from Kent at the end of the day. It might not look like it fully, but I'm technically a half white guy who grew up in a very, very monocultural area. I love the culture there. I love the dialect of English that people speak there, the humor. I love it a lot. But I just didn't limit myself to it. I've been around West Africans, Arabs, Far East Asians, South Asians, Southeast Asians, all these different communities, Latinos, influenced me a lot. My personality, my perception, things like in Korean, they have the word nunchi, which is a part of their culture where they're very perceptive to body language in a way that Brits were just not. Right? They'll look at little things that you do and, oh, he's got good nunchi. He knows how to act in that thing. These things have influenced me so much. Like we mentioned in when we spoke on the previous podcast, your brain just gets sharper. And I noticed that as well, that I think in a generation where there is a lot of junk content, it's easy to, sometimes I love it sometimes.
Right.
We all do sometimes. Yeah. There's entertaining content. It's excellent, but it can also, attention spans are decreasing. People are finding it harder to focus, me included. So if you can do something that counteracts that, stimulates your brain every day, keeps you sharp, I want to be able, big shout out to Mr. Steve Kaufman. We interviewed him. I think you've also...
Oh, yeah, Steve's great, of course.
80 years old,
Wild.
Sharp as a razor.
Wild.
And I'm sure that, he's speaking all those languages and studying that has kept him super sharp. And those are people I look up to. Why do it? Because I want to be able to to have that sharpness as I get older. And I think that it's just, you can't reduce it to an app, but you can't only reduce it to studying. Like, as you can see from this conversation, it's very broad. And the final point I will say is that I haven't mentioned is I love accents and pronunciation. And I'm obsessive about those things. When I hear someone say something in another language, I'll repeatedly say that over and over and over again. And I'll get my friends from that country to critique my accent. Whether it was French, it was the très, vous. Les Anglais, quand ils parlent français, ils parlent comme ça. Ils disent souvent, vous voulez faire quoi? And my French friends would like bully me until I get vous. Vous voulez faire quoi? Vous, très, très. You know, same in Thai. Ha, ha, ha. Swaddy cup, cup. D. Going over, obsessing about it. In the shower, just speaking to myself. In the street, talking to myself.
Yep.
Karaoke, over and over again. Having that level of like obsession about things is really useful as well. You know, when you're obsessed in a positive way, you're not tracking, did I read this for an hour? You're like in the flow state. I know you always talk about the flow state.
Yep.
That is so useful. When you're in the flow, you are not looking at the clock. Like this podcast. I'm just looking at the clock now.
Whatever happens.
Yeah, we need to wrap up. But the flow state is incredible.
Lock it in. Yeah. More fulfilling for your life, more fulfilling for everything. It's just everyone should seek to be in the flow state as much as possible, you know, and a lot of times, like we said, not saying not to do the apps, not saying not to scroll on your phone sometimes. I'm just saying try and get more flow in your life, not just for language learning. It'll just overall make everything better. So Evolve Podcast, guys can check it out. Is there anywhere else that we should send people? It's just
well, you can check us out. We're obviously the Evolve Podcast on YouTube, but it's podcast. A lot of people like to listen on Spotify as well.
Okay.
So you can search Evolve HQ. You've got us on Instagram and TikTok as well.
All right.
Short, so yeah.
Perfect. Guys, you know exactly where to look in the description to check that out. Check out the podcast that we did or the podcast that we've done so far. If you haven't seen all those, HAKIM obviously will be back on the channel at some point. We'll do a whole lot more stuff, but leave questions, leave comments. Tons of stuff. I want to see stuff down below. Anything you guys want to know, we'll hit him up. Maybe he'll come over here and answer a couple questions in the comments, and we'll have him back. So, HAKIM, appreciate it. Guys, we'll see you later. Thanks for coming, man.
감사합니다.
Peace out.